Добрый день.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear guests. Let me declare open the session of the Dissertation Council for the Defense of Thesis by Medyanik, Olga, Victorovna, with a degree of candidate of Psychological Sciences, Specialization 190012, Political Psychology, on the theme Russian citizens' attitude towards insurance policies as effect of individual economic security. According to the order of St. Petersburg University, dated 14th October 2019, number 188/1, me, Gurieva Svetlana Zakhodovna, Doctor of Psychological Sciences Professor, acting head of Department of Social Psychology at St. Petersburg University, was appointed chairman of this Dissertation Council. Also, let me introduce my fellow council members. Bilazorov Sergei Anatolovich. Thank you. Doctor of Economic Sciences, Professor, Department of Risk Management and Insurance, St. Petersburg University. Minina Vera Nikolaevna, Doctor of Sociological Sciences, Professor, Department of Sociology, Culture and Communications, St. Petersburg University. Почебут Людмила Георгиевна, Doctor of Psychology, Professor, Department of Social Psychology of St. Petersburg University. Nestik Timofey Alexandrovich, Doctor of Psychological Sciences, Professor, Russian Academy of Sciences, Head of Laboratory of Social and Economic Psychology, Institute of Psychology of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Reshetnikov Mikhail Mikhailovich, Doctor of Psychology, Professor, Rector of East European Institute of Psychoanalysis. Gansirovska Agata Dorota, Doctor, University of Social Psychology. Thank you. And in the remote mode, we have Kristi Koev, Doctor, PhD of Tartu, Estonia. First, let me emphasize that according to the federal law of the 23rd of August 1996, on science and the state scientific and technical policy, St. Petersburg University academic degrees independently. The corresponding order on the procedure for St. Petersburg University, on the basis of which we are holding this session of the Council, was issued on the 1st of September 2018. In accordance with this order, a session of the Dissertation Council constituted if at least 2/3 of its approved members meeting. Our Dissertation Council consists of 8 members. All the members are present, including one member of the Council in the remote interactive mode. Visual contact has been established. Thus, let me set forth the procedure of today's session with a total duration of no more than 2 hours. Well, the procedure shall be as follows. We shall start with the on the main content of documents submitted by the applicant and their compliance with the applicable regulations. Brief presentation by the applicant outlining the key points of her study, 15 minutes. Questions to the applicant strictly on her report, speeches of all members of the Dissertation Council with their reviews, speech of the chairman in her review, answers of the applicant to questions and remarks and comments, open discussion. Let me draw your attention to the fact that all the attendees are kindly requested to register themselves on the registration sheet. Final answers of the applicant to questions asked, speech of the academic advisor, a 5-minute discussion before the open voting, and taking a decision on awarding or not awarding the academic degree to the applicant. Closing remarks of the applicant. So that's our procedure for today. Before starting the official procedure, let me remind you to switch off your mobile phones and gadgets. Thank you all for your understanding. Let me also inform you that our meeting shall be recorded and broadcast online at the university website and the speeches are being simultaneously translated from Russian into English or from English into Russian. So, let me begin the meeting with our first item, the Chairman's Summary Report. The thesis by Medyanik Olga Victorovna for the degree of Candidate of Psychological Sciences, Specialty 190012 Political Psychology, on the theme Russian citizens' attitude towards insurance policies as a factor of individual economic security, was accepted for defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University on the 14th of October 2019. The Dissertation Council was appointed by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University, and I have already introduced its members to you, dear colleagues and guests. So I will not repeat myself. The applicant, Medyanik Olga Victorovna, submitted the following documents to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University. An application to the Rector of St. Petersburg University, a review by the academic advisor, a list of 11 publications, a certificate on passing all the candidates' examination, a diploma and completion of postgraduate course, and a thesis in Russian and English on the rights of manuscript and the electronic form. The thesis has been formatted in accordance with the requirements of the state standard. It should also be noted that all the documents listed above comply with Clause 11, Section 3, Thesis Presentation and Defense, the procedure for awarding the academic degree at Pittsburgh University. If no one has any questions regarding that, no one has questions, we shall proceed to the next item on our agenda, the applicant's presentation on the key points of her research. You have 15 minutes, please. Council members, colleagues and guests, I would like to present and report on this in my presentation. Insurance policies effect of individual economic security. The main goal of the state is the formation of a national insurance system capable of effectively protecting property interests of citizens, legal entities, and the state when insured events happen. The state policy in the sphere of insurance assumes a complex of measures and establishing healthy in the market, improving the culture of insurance, level and quality of insurance services provided to consumers. Despite prevalence of practice of providing insurance services in modern Russia, psychological aspects of the attitude of citizens to the policy today in domestic science has not been sufficiently investigated. The problems of the state insurance policy are practically not developed. The need to take into account the citizens' attitude towards insurance policy makes our research relevant. The subject of my study is the attitude of the Russian citizens towards insurance policy in the context of economic security of the individual. The object of my study is citizens of the Russian residents of St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region. A total of 1,793 people took part in the study. The methodological basis of the study was formed by an interdisciplinary approach traditional for political and economic psychology, which implies a synthesis of psychological, economic, political, and social knowledge. The study was based on the methodological principles and approaches systematized by Professor Dineka. Of all the approaches to study political and economic consciousness, special attention was paid to the typological approach. A level and comparative approach has also been applied. The purpose of my research was the study of the attitude of Russian citizens towards insurance policies effect of economic security of an individual. Between 2008 and 2019, a study was conducted which included 4 stages, which were separate stages united by a single logic of solving the tasks. I set myself the following theoretical and methodological tasks: use quantitative and qualitative research methods. I won't go into detail. You can see the methods in this slide. basic provisions put forward for defense. Economic security of an individual in the context of insurance behavior is understood as a long-term state of stability of personal financial position to the manifestation of external and internal threats to personal financial sovereignty, independence, capacity for economic development, and is manifested at several levels: financial certainty and anxiety, economic and insurance attitudes, values, preferences, relationships, financial literacy and planning, insurance culture and trust. Second, insurance as a system of annual contract renewal creates a form of financial planning for citizens, reduces uncertainty in the future, gives a sense of financial stability. The attitude of citizens to the policy of insurance is a factor of economic security of the person, reducing financial anxiety for the insurance risks. The Russian citizens have a controversial attitude to the state policy in the sphere of control over the activity of insurance institutions, informing the population about the insurance policy. 4. In the development of the economic insurance policy, it's advisable to take into account the typological differences between citizen paternalists and marketers. Tolerance for uncertainty and economic patriotism contribute to a more positive assessment by Russian citizens of the state economic policy. And finally, it's necessary to stimulate the improvement of financial literacy of citizens with paternalistic attitudes to increase confidence in modern insurance institutions. Next, let me move on to the main results of my research. The longitudinal research using the method of observation interviews with policyholders allowed to identify the expressed signs and symptom complex of insurance behavior, to follow the changes in the economic consciousness of market participants, to record the typological difference in behavior. The consequence was the emergence of original typology of policyholders: rational, anxious, trusting, and risky types. The typology of policyholders is demonstrated in this slide. Since stages 2 and 3 were designed to find the adequate research instruments, and the results were used to design stage 4, I will present the results in stage 4 in order to save time. A sample of the study of attitudes to insurance policy was made up of citizens of the Russian Federation, respective of their sex, age, and place of residence. Participation of 304 people took part in the study. So I will not go into detail. The majority of responses experienced insurance basically in May 19. The results are summarized in the table. Most of insurance basically in the field of tourist insurance and auto insurance. Of course, most of them buy insurance policies. Accident and life insurance are least popular among our respondents. Only 6.7% insurance experience found it difficult to answer. So, no more than half our sample was made of citizens working in the commercial sector. Main age range of our respondents was 30 to 49 years, over 60%. More than 91% had experience of cooperation with insurance companies. About half of the citizens had average subject level of income. I will give the data descriptive statistics which clearly characterize the attitude of citizens to insurance. Shown that about 36% of respondents agreed it's better to pay money for insurance than to trust in the fate. 56 are not ready to leave today and are ready to transfer responsibility for their risks to insurance institutions. More than 72% of citizens believe that financial literacy is low in Russia. But approximately 81% of respondents demonstrating paternalistic attitudes believe that the risks associated with natural disasters should be borne by the state. Measurements of citizens' financial anxiety introduced in the questionnaire should demonstrate the psychological characteristics of their attitude to the insurance industry. Almost 73% of our respondents are often worried about the loss, deterioration of property, or constantly worried about their financial future. More than 82% believe that insurance reduces or may reduce the financial concern for their property. This statistically high rates of judgments demonstrate a high degree of respondents' consent that participation in insurance activity reduces financial anxiety and increases the economic security of an individual. More than 68.6% of citizens believe that there should be strictly controlled the activities of insurance companies, banks, and pension funds by the state. And improvement of the quality of life decisions can be achieved above all by competent economic laws. During the factor analysis, factor structure was obtained, which contains 5 factors presented in this slide. A factor of greatest value is one that names the financial anxiety factor, describing 12% of the total dispersion. The factor includes reflections of the decision's feelings about the possible loss of property, and anxiety about their financial future, irritation about the lack of money, and long-term concentration on disturbing events. The second factor indicates the satisfaction of a citizen as a consumer of solving economic problems by politicians and the government of Russia. The second factor of attitude to economic policy describes 10.67% of the total dispersion. The third factor testifies to existence of strategies of market behavior of the Russian citizens. We call it the factor of rational attitudes and market behavior, describes 6.91% of the general dispersion. In the factor of insurance experience describes 5.97% of the preference of citizens and insurance policy of the household. It combines this idea about the appropriateness, benefits, and of insurance factor. The fifth factor is called risk perception. This factor combines opinions of respondents about perception, assessment, and transfer of risk and responsibility for insurance events and other economic problems. The factor includes features that most reflect characteristics of paternalistic attitudes. The correlation analysis of the data showed there is no reliable difference between the choice of insurance product and estimates of financial anxiety of an individual. There's also no reliable difference between estimation of attitudes towards economic policy and preferences in the choice of insurance products. Significant and reliable differences were observed between the choice of an insurance product and those groups that combine features of market behavior factors, insurance feasibility, active policyholders, and risk perception, paternalists. As can be seen from the table in the slide, among the market players for rational strategies and economic behavior, there are more those who prefer to buy obligatory insurance, casco, real estate policies. Among the active insurers, there are more those, it's logical, who prefer expensive voluntary insurance programs, such as real estate insurance, life insurance. Paternalists are much less likely to take into account the active consumption of insurance products and consider mortgage insurance, casco, real estate to be inappropriate. Significant differences were found in the fifth risk perception factor, paternalists, within those working for the state in the commercial sphere. Among the paternalists, there are more those working in the public sector and fewer in the commercial sector. In order to predict the influence of typological features on the choice of insurance programs, regression analysis was carried out using logistic regression. As a result of this work, the following model was created, shown in this slide. The results of regression analysis of our respondents who were among the current insurers and market insurance programs, trust insurance policy, which confirms the main survey. The scientific novelty of my research is insurance policy in the post-Soviet period, which is reflected in the following results. I will not read the results, so I will go straight to practical significance. So I'd like to pay special attention to practical significance, which lies in the possibility of using the results obtained in the formation of the state insurance program for the population and financial literacy programs. As I have already mentioned, so I will not read the conclusions and proceed. Conclusion: they have the basic recommendation established from the insurance policy. Insurance policy should be developed by policyholders. The following measures could increase the degree of cooperation, state educational work with the population to improve the economic culture and financial literacy. The foundation, starting with school education, continue additional education. The insurance policy should be based on strengthening trust in of the insurer in the regulatory and supervisory function of the state in the insurance sector, and have a strict supervision of all participants of the insurance market. Thirdly, there's also a need to increase cognitive requirements for legal decision. For example, a SAGA program should be modified towards a fair tariff guideline that takes into account the personal contribution of each driver to break-even driving. The developers of the insurance programs should take into account typological characteristics in the consumers of insurance services. For policyholders, it's important to develop programs that demonstrate social and financial protection by the state in case of unjustified refusals of insurance compensation, fraud on the part of insurance intermediaries, and bankruptcies of insurance companies. It's important for the citizens to receive information about insurance rates and legislative changes from the state media. Compulsory and voluntary insurance for the citizens will almost always be compulsory. So it's important to educate the population and take state measures to improve financial literacy and insurance culture in order to increase insurance confidence. It's important for policyholders with market studies to present on the market a greater number of private educational programs on insurance culture, as digital to carry out joint activities on unification of insurance technological processes. For their part, insurance companies should demonstrate high-quality standards of insurance services provided to clients. Demonstration of the role of the state in insurance regulation for the citizens has no special importance in making the economic and insurance decisions. Thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation. Olga Victorovna, thank you for being on time. And questions? Questions to the applicant strictly on her presentation. Member of the Council, Minina Nikolaevna, Olga Victorovna, thank you very much for your brief presentation. I have the following question. You define economic security of an individual through a stable financial situation, while in your empirical study you test consumer anxiety, and you study consumer behavior, which is not limited to financial characteristics. So why did you focus on financial stability? Thank you. Vera Nikolaevna, on financial stability or on anxiety? Economic safety you define as financial stability. We're talking about financial security. Why only with financial stability, while in your empirical study you include other parameters? Consumer behavior cannot be reduced to financial aspects only. Financial stability, of course, we defined in the context of insurance sphere, in the sphere of insurance. So financial anxiety we consider in the limelight of insurance protection. Dear Olga Victorovna, thank you very much for your presentation. I have the following question. In your presentation, you use the expression or term insurance policy. It's used many times in your thesis, but when I read your thesis, I never came across the list of subjects of this policy. So who's implementing this policy? Is this the state, insurers, insurance companies, or physical individuals, physical persons, individuals? Who are the subjects of this policy, and what is this policy aimed at? Policy, or who? When we discuss state policy, we executive bodies exercise a regulatory function over, which includes the state, central bank. Okay, thank you. I understand. So you're talking about the state policy. You are talking about the state insurance policy. Agencies regulating this sphere. Thank you, Sergei. Ludmila Georgievna, could you list them? Let's switch the microphone. We used collection of empirical methods. Speaking of qualitative methods, correlation analysis, factor analysis, regression analysis, and cluster. And which methods did you, with which method did you collect empirical material? Empirical material we collected with the help of all these methods, but the main three methods were used at the fourth stage: factor analysis, psychological methods, questionnaires. Yes, we used mostly questionnaire. So we used observation and interviewing. Thank you very much. More questions, please? Timothy Alexandrovich, please. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to clarify what are social psychological mechanisms form the basis of individuals' attitude towards insurance services. Maybe you can list a few on the basis of based on your results. I think in our study we found that the main social and psychological mechanisms are trust to state policy, in the state policy. Thank you. Thank you. Dear colleagues.
A very brief presentation. I have one very short question. Could you please tell what's the relation or the difference or similarity between attitudes towards insurance policy and attitude towards insurance in general? Is this the same or these are different constructs?
Thank you for your question. We did not divide these two concepts, insurance policy and insurance in general. Within our study, we wanted to study the citizens' attitude towards insurance policy. In Russia, there are we have two lines of insurance: life insurance and insurance of other risks. The state regulates mostly regulates mandatory car insurance. Thank you. Dear colleagues, do we have more questions? Does any of the guests? So thank you. No one has any questions. Let us proceed to the next item on our reviews submitted to the thesis. We don't have any external reviews, so we shall proceed to reviews submitted by the members of the Dissertation Council, and I would like to give the floor to Belozorov Sergei Anatolyevich. Thank the chairman for the opportunity to present, and I'd like to say that because we have a limited time, I'm not going to read the entire review. In my speech, I'd like to say the following. First, the thesis by Olga Victorovna Medyanik is the theme is highly relevant. I'd like to say that Olga Victorovna is and explain the level of the population as an important factor for the development of insurance market in Russia, and as a significant factor for formation of and rationalization of the state. So this, of course, is highly important in theoretical studies of financial literacy as a factor for development of the insurance market in particular and financial market in general. More and more attention is paid, but so far this attention is not enough in this theory. General question of by Olga Victorovna Medyanik is not disturbed by minor comments I included in my review. So I'd like to read the reviews, maybe using the text. For example, in chapter 1, Olga Victorovna says that speaks of external and internal financial risks of an individual. By external risks, for example, is increase or decrease in average income, average monthly salary of a citizen. And the internal economic risks are own negative actions, such as inefficient personal financial planning and the use of own funds, waste and distrust in financial institutions. So it's not clear to me when I was reading this, when I came across this statement, it was not clear to me why does the author believe that an increase in the average income or average monthly wages is an economic risk. So do you see the difference between these two concepts? It's not obvious from the text. Why do you describe those as an economic risk? And can these have negative economic consequences for the individual? My income is growing, so what are the negative economic consequences of this? And why the use of own funds is a risk? And so then what do you mean by the own funds? I understand that my own funds is of a joint stock company or a limited liability company. So, so I look at section 3 of the balance sheet, but what are the own funds of an individual, of a household? I don't understand. I don't have a clear understanding on that. And I have one more question. On page 57 of your thesis, you make the following statement. You say the decision of a subject to invest his personal money in one or another investment product forms the driving force of the economy. However, with which I totally agree, however, the fact that these decisions can be irreversible due to the uncertainty of the consequences of investment and the risks of transactions can bring certain individual experiences. And after that, private investors can only manage the risk that they take. So to me it seems that this statement is quite controversial, because the essence of insurance is in passing the risks on. The essence initial risk carriers for a fee transfer their responsibility to another subject that specializes in managing such risks. At the same time, the thesis a Russian citizen attitude towards insurance policies effect of individual economic security by Medyanik Olga Victorovna is, in my opinion, a piece of research which has practical importance. By its content, the scientific novelty, the level of research and value results, the thesis by Olga corresponds to qualification requirements applied to specialty 190012 political psychology and to clause 914 of the order awarding academic degrees approved by the government of Russian Federation on the 24th of September 2013, number 842, corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order on the of awarding academic degrees and the applicant, Medyanik Olga Victorovna, deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of psychology 0012 political psychology. Paragraph 11 of the above mentioned order has not been violated by the applicant. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much for detailed review. Let's hear first, and then the floor to our respected applicant to answer all the reviews at once. Does anyone have any objections to that suggestion? Now I would like to give the floor to Minina Vera Nikolaevna, professor of St. Petersburg University. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the academic advisor to invite me to learn about this interesting study. I will not repeat what has already been said about relevance. I'd like to focus on the important results which are relevant not only for psychology but for economics and social sciences. What seemed very highly significant to me in this complex study is a systematized approach to insurance analysis as a psychological phenomenon, which is very important. So here we deal with behavioral characteristics, multi-level structure of concepts which can be used to study insurance behavior of the citizens. In context of resolution of the thirdly, the connection between trust and individual and trust to insurance policy and insurance system, which depend on the trust culture, which our society certainly lacks. Next, developed instruments or tools which can be used to measure such attitude of citizens, not only of Russian Federation but also in the other countries. And here I'd like to emphasize that Chapter 2, in my opinion, was especially interesting for me because it contains a whole list of instruments that can be used to study this behavior. So what else I'd like to mention is a typology of insurance, which the applicant has already described. And here it's very important that in her thesis she suggests a differentiated approach, not an average indicator, but different types of policyholders need different approaches and different attitude. Also, what I found very interesting, and to me this seems to be a valuable scientific result, is proving that insurance literacy is low. So this issue has to be dealt with, especially by education institutions, educational programs, and lack of trust, personal trust. So this is also an important symptom. The thesis is a complete, is well thought, well balanced. The author has. I'd like to identify 4 points of scientific novelty, which, in my opinion, to which attention should be paid. First of all, that's the concept itself, concept of research of behavior of Russian citizens and attitudes to the insurance policy. Like the approach to financial security, behavior, trust, and attitude. Secondly, the clarification of concept of the economic security. Here, some points can still be discussed, but in general, I'm satisfied with the answer given by the applicant. As for the toolkit, I also believe this is a new point. Typology of insurance behavior. The results can be used for developing the state policy and in the purposes, and I would recommend to develop her own university on insurance or any other thesis. mostly to Chapter 1, which in my opinion is the most complicated and theoretical, and the study has interdisciplinary nature, and so here we have some issues here. So let me read my comments to be accurate. Firstly, attention is drawn to the fact that interrelation of the concept institution, insurance institutions, insurance market, insurance policy is not sufficiently developed. Page 36, the author says about the formation of new economic institutions such as insurance, investment and fiscal policy. But investment and fiscal policy are not institutions. And from the text, it's also not quite clear what's the difference between the insurance institution and the insurance industry and the insurance market. Here, so then I'll explain what applies to, and then it's also important that such delimitation of these concepts is important, and hopefully the applicant can answer this comment. Secondly, on page 39, it's not clear why the threats that may accompany citizens in the economic activity include preservation of solvency and planning future investment. If the author associates economic security of a person with reduction or prevention of the economic risks, then it's necessary to focus on these risks. I don't think that planning poses a threat to the economic security. And finally, in the thesis, insufficient attention is paid to the issue of formation of attitude to cooperation with the insurance institutions. The topic here, I would I think it's the same question has been asked by another member who suggested to define attitude to insurance and attitude to insurance policy. In my opinion, insurance includes an important concept connected with solidarity behavior. Solidarity is only touched briefly on page 41, only in passing, and I recommend that the applicant pays more attention to this point in the future. However, these comments do not reduce the overall positive assessment of the study conducted by Olga Victorovna, and the thesis as an original scientific study contains valuable points and conclusions and my general conclusion is that the thesis of Medyanik Olga Victorovna is a complete and independently executed scientific research aimed at solving relevant scientific and practical problems. The author developed and tested an original program to study insurance behavior of citizens, reflecting the attitude of Russian citizens to insurance policy and factors affecting it. Research results have novelty and practical value. The thesis by Olga Victorovna Medyanik, the theme Russian citizens' attitude towards insurance policy as a factor of individual economic security, corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order. Will not give the number on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and the applicant Medyanik Olga Victorovna deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of specialty 190012, political psychology. Paragraph 11 of the above mentioned not been violated by the applicant. Thank you. Thank you, Vera Nikolaevna. Thank you. Pachebut Ludmila, psychology professor. By Medyanik Olga Victorovna to the need to consider the human factor in the state insurance policy in this insurance. So that's a psychological problem, as has been proved by scientific novelty, validity of statements and recommendations is the attitude of Russian citizens to insurance policy in the current period. Purpose, objectives, and hypotheses of the thesis. The author analysis of insurance issues analyzed the basic concepts, classification that touches upon the issues of study of the citizens' attitude to the insurance policy. The work carried out allowed the author to assess the degree of elaboration of her approach, she developed methodological approaches, large array of study methods, as well as quality psychological study, and program of the study has been compiled. The thesis consists of introduction, 3 chapters, list of literature. In the introduction, the author describes relevance of the chosen topic. In the first chapter, the author reviews works devoted to insurance, analyzes issues of personal safety in the economy. The advantages of the theoretical part are the author's reference to a document of the Russian government related to the strategy of improving the insurance system in Russia. Secondly, the authors developed a successful definition of the economic security of the individual and systematize various factors affecting the insurance behavior of the individual, and a descriptive structure of insurance transformation has been proposed. In the second chapter, the author analyzes the methodological approaches and study of citizens. The study combines qualitative and quantitative methods and consists of 4 main stages. In the third chapter, the author describes policy of empirical study. As a result of this study, the author developed typology of insurance behavior of the citizens, identified psychological factors and components of the Russian citizens' attitude towards insurance. The practical significance lies in the possibility to use the results in the curriculum on financial literacy. The merit of the work is to bring as many psychological nuances as possible into her study. She developed typology of which could be used in the insurance business. As a drawback, I'd like to mention redundancy of empirical material. This too detailed description of the results of the pilot studies. And in conclusion, I'd like to say Thesis by Olga Victorovna Medyanik. Russian citizens' attitude towards insurance policy as a factor of individual economic security. Submitted for degree of candidate of psychology, corresponds to the basic requirements applied to a candidate's thesis, specialty 190012, political psychology, and corresponds to paragraph 914 of regulations on the order of awarding academic degrees approved by the government, the Russian Federation, the 24th of September 2013, number 842, corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order the 1st of September 2016, number 68.1, on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the applicant deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of psychological sciences, specialty 1900 psychology. Clause 11 of the above mentioned order has not been violated by the applicant. Thank you, Lyudmila Georgievna, for your review. Nestik Timofey Alexandrovich, Doctor of Psychology, Professor, Russian Academy of Science. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I'd like to emphasize that the study of psychological individuals' attitude is becoming more and more relevant because of the need for institutional support for long-term orientation of the economic behavior of citizens in a risk society. Attitude of Russians to insurance policy is closely connected with the level of institutional trust, the crisis of which is observed today all over the world. In this situation, a study of the insurance policy of the state gives the possibility of scientifically grounded correction of the insurance policy and more differentiated use of scientific experience rotation of the state strategy of insurance market development. Of course, of great interest is the types of individuals' attitude to insurance services and recommendation on adjustment of the insurance policy. In addition to the mentioned advantages, I'd like to make some minor comments, which of course do not affect, firstly, the structure of insurance behavior proposed by the author, represented by the 5 levels, should be related to the levels of social and psychological analysis, which would make it possible to identify personal, interpersonal, group, intergroup, and macro psychological factors which affect the individual's attitude to insurance policy. This could make it possible to identify the attitude to insurance as an individual economic strategy, own economic behavior, and its relation to insurance as a social institution. Secondly, the work would have significantly benefited from the wider use of statistical methods that allow us to talk about the direction of relationships. I mean, a wider use of regression analysis and, of course, so there's enough data to use structural modeling. The data collected allow us to draw conclusions not only about the connections but also about the socio-psychological mechanisms of individuals' attitude to insurance, which have not been described enough, unfortunately. And in addition to that, when using questionnaires, which are of course very interesting, it would also use confirmatory factor analysis. Let me emphasize that these comments do not diminish the quality of research carried out by the applicant, and the thesis by Olga Victorovna and Medyanik corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order on awarding the academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and she deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of psychological sciences, specialty in political psychology. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Timofey Alexandrovich. Let us continue, and let's give the floor to Reshetnikov Mikhail Mikhailovich, Professor Rector of East European University of Psychoanalysis. Dear Chairman, Olga Victorovna, academic advisor, the presentations, the speeches of my predecessors allow me to, I've submitted my review. I have a positive opinion of the thesis, and it's one should welcome this new trend of study of economic. This is a new sphere for psychological research which did not exist in during the Soviet period. As in Novelty, speaking of Novelty, I said that the economic policy of the state and making such decisions is made without taking account psychological factors of the citizens' behavior, forced upon them. Behavior is, of course, connected with certain feelings, desires of an individual, and of course all these procedures are based on trust, and of course first of all they are based on the lack of trust. People don't believe in what may happen to them. People are afraid to lack, and based on greed. The wealthier the person is, the more options for insurance behavior he has. The hardly ever buy insurance policies because they also need money to buy insurance policies. The sick who need insurance, health insurance more than anyone else, they cannot get health insurance because the healthier you are, the easier it is for someone to obtain. So these drawbacks of the insurance system, especially recently there was a system where you want to borrow a bank. So what's the trust? So there's a lack of trust. And I believe that the author, in very correct terms in her thesis, avoids touching upon these issues, but the thesis is very deep and touches upon many issues, many problems that call for further study. I have a very positive opinion of what has been done, but since 50% of our citizens, people have Soviet backgrounds, and I'm one of them, it will be very interesting to study the attitude to insurance policy and to insurance procedure of the people grew up during the Soviet period, people who grew up in 35, 40 years who don't remember the Soviet period. That will be a very interesting issue to study. But generally speaking, I can conclude that the thesis by Medyanik Olga Victorovna on attitude of Russian citizens towards insurance policy, a factor of individual economic security, submitted for candidate of psychology, corresponds to the basic qualification requirements applied to candidate's thesis, specialty 190012 in political psychology, and corresponds to paragraph 914 of regulations on the order of awarding academic degrees approved by the government of the Russian Federation on the 24th of September 2013, number 842. And it meets the basic requirements established by the order of the 1st of September 2016, 6821/1, on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And the applicant, Medyanik Olga Victorovna, deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of psychology, specialty 190012, political psychology. Clause 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated by the applicant. Mikhail Mikhalovich, thank you. Next review by Gonsirovska, Agata Dorota, University of Social Psychology and Social Sciences of Poland.
I would like to thank you very much for inviting me here. First of all, I want to say of psychological factors playing a role in economic behavior and is timely and very from this point of view. It is very important that Russian citizens experience lack of insurance and investment culture, what most probably results from lack of economic knowledge and lack of financial literacy. So I agree with Olga Medyanik that there is a massive necessity for the state institutions, not only in Russia, to consider psychology, adopting and implementing laws and policies that would have impact on citizens' economic behavior. From this point of view, I consider the research project presented by Olga timely and important. This definitely could be an contributes to both economic and political psychology, not only in Russia, but also on the international level. I have some remarks, and I presented them in my review. I'm not going to read them all because it's really a lot of literature, let's say. I would concentrate on the most important concerns that I would have. The first thing, my first question is that since the core goal of the thesis is to examine Russian citizens' attitude towards the insurance policy as a factor of individual economic security, my question is, what is the relation between security and financial anxiety that was measured by the And also, what is the causal economic security, insurance behavior, and investing? Is it true that attitudes are the predictor of economic security measured as financial anxiety, or maybe the relation should be tested in a different way? My second concern is that I want to stress that while author claims that the results she collected in her dissertation allows to conclude on Russian citizens, her samples consist mostly on participants living in St. Petersburg and Leningrad regions, are relatively small concerning the size of Russian Federation population, and undoubtedly are not representative. Of course, when we test specific hypotheses on the relation between various psychological phenomena, having representative samples is advised but not crucial, because even non-representative but heterogeneous sample would allow to demonstrate such relations. However, without representative samples, we cannot conclude from the results to the whole population. So my question is, how would potentially the results change if it was possible to get data from representative sample? Or maybe they would be exactly the same. My next concern is related to the fact, to how the data were analyzed, and actually was mentioned by the colleague sitting next to me. In my opinion, since it is known what should be the structure of the questionnaires used by Olga Medyanik, she should rather use confirmatory factor analysis, not exploratory factor analysis. And also, when reporting the results of exploratory factor analysis, she should be very strict and detailed in providing exact information on how the analysis was performed. In some cases, there is an information that it was Kaiser criterion, eigenvalues larger than 1, used to establish the number of factors, while sometimes it is not. Also, I have a question why, this is only my guess because it's not written in each study, why the Varimax rotation was used, so orthogonal rotation rather than Promax rotation, since within the questionnaires, the specific items measured psychological concepts that are potentially related, because this is what is expected in the hypothesis. So how would potentially the results change? Would they be the same or maybe stronger if Promax or any other non-orthogonal rotation would be employed? So these are my biggest concerns. Nevertheless, I want to stress that I believe that most of these disadvantages could be overcome in the future work. And I believe that in its present version, the dissertation entitled Russian Citizens' Attitude Towards Insurance Policies as a Factor of Individuals' Economic Security, prepared by Mrs. Olga Medyanik, meets qualification requirements for candidate dissertation on specialization 19 in St. Petersburg State University.
Еще раз спасибо. Мы движемся.
Let us forward. Shall now give the floor Stikoev. Can you hear us?
Thank you for the possibility to review the thesis of Medyanik Olga Victorovna. Thank you very much to you also. This thesis reflects a commendable effort to expand the political psychology literature, specifically in the rather understudied area, relationships between citizenships and insurance and investment context of post. This thesis the highly relevant and vital area and research in the developing area of social psychology, integrating macroeconomic, social and personal indicators and concentrating the Russian citizen attitude to insurance policy. This thesis is inspired from the balanced theoretical and methodological point of view as interdisciplinary approach, reflecting a sound grasp of the literature with a well-argumented new perspective on whole analysis and synthesized material in terms of insurance behavior and attitude to insurance. Theoretical and methodological basis of the research works in leading authors as well as references from valid and relevant scientific literature. It is worth mentioning that most of the references are from the last decade, showing the topical issue. 11 individual authors' publications do exist based on the site references during last 5 years. No major criticism regarding the overall quality of the work. I should like to move to some specific areas, dissertations with some issues which would be addressed to specify these themes through academical dissertation and discussion. At first, most positive side. The most important thing is that authors succeed in connecting of qualitative and quantitative research methods of analysis of the research material with developing and validating 7 of quantitative measurement instruments based on the last data set in order to assess the quality of instrument, showing the author's high-level research experience and impressive command of empirical methodology. Nevertheless, I would like to take into consideration 2 questions that formulate my critical approach connected with methodology. Firstly, the first stage of the empirical 4-stage study is called across the dissertation as a longitudinal study, also a longitudinal observation or longitudinal study using the observation method combined surveys. It needs a clarification during academical dissertation about the differences between longitudinal versus cross-sectional studies, and also answering to the question about how and when, in the first stage of the research, repeated methods were used to follow participants over prolonged periods of time. Secondly, the participant 4-stage study was 1,000 and nearly 800 most. Whereas the most of them were clients of insurance companies from St. Petersburg and Leningrad region, without mentioning the citizens of all the respondents. It is needed theoretical and or empirical clarification through the dissertation defending terminology in the city, the state versus society individual level was preferred to follow across whole the dissertation. Now some novelty. The novelty of the scientific dissertation is considering the importance of the research subject and considerable thought. The question for the author of the dissertation might be related to more in-depth information regarding of the dissertation research. bit of the remarks for academical dissertation, this PhD thesis is clearly the result of hard work conducted during the past decade, and much effort has been devoted to deliver a high quality thesis. Conclusions. The dissertation research of Medyanik Olga Victorovna presented for the candidate degree in psychology science meets the qualification requirements of candidate dissertation on speciality of political psychology. Thank you for attention.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо. Уважаемые коллеги, разрешите мне озвучить свой отзыв.
Let me read my review. I will not read all of it, as most of the points, most of the questions have already been asked. Let me focus on the key points of my review. First of all, I'd like to say the relevance of the study by Olga Victorovna Medyanik lies in the growing interest in the interest of modern Russia. Though insurance services becoming more and more common, psychological aspects of the attitude of citizens to the institute of insurance have not been sufficiently studied. Because of that, I'd like to draw attention and praise the results of the study for science and for practical reasons as well. The role of insurance from the point of psychological science as an institute that ensures financial security of an individual. Comment on the structure of insurance trust described by the author. Insurance, financial literacy, and insurance culture. And I would also like to mention deep understanding of current aspects of insurance market in Russia, even though I have very high opinion of Novelty, and with the work has some minor drawbacks to which I would like to draw your attention. For example, I have a question. The quantitative indication. The author mentions different number of people to taking part in this study, and so I have a question like how many exactly people took part in this study. I would like to say that the age of 18 to 68 years old may influence, and certainly influence formation of insurance policy and attitude to insurance policy. The issue of gender difference also remains open. The author formulated the main hypothesis on pages 7-8. So it will be interesting. It has been proved. Clarify a number of terminological definition and statements by rational strategies and market strategies. Are they similar? There is a number of misprints and questions do not diminish the value of the thesis, and it deserves a positive large amount of work which successfully solved the tasks, made conclusions, and suggested some practical recommendations. By Medyanik Olga Victorovna on the theme Attitude of Russian Citizens to the Policy of Insurance, a Factor of an Individual Degree of Candidate of Psychology, meets the basic requirements applied to candidate's thesis, specialty 190012, political psychology, and corresponds to paragraph 914 of the Order of Awarding Academic of the Russian Federation. 24th of September 2013, basic requirements, the order on award degrees at St. Petersburg University. The applicant, Medyanik Olga Victorovna, deserves to be awarded the degree of Candidate of Psychology, specialty 190012, Political Psychology. Clause 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated by the applicant. Thank you. And now all the reviews have been presented by the council members. Let me ask Olga Victorovna to answer questions and comments made by the council members. Thank you, all members of the Dissertation Council, for your comments. With your permission, I will try to answer briefly in the same order as questions. Dear Sergei Anatolovich, in answer to you, as I called external risks, I agree that the wording of this idea is quite controversial. Maybe I did this because of assumption that practical work by economic psychologists, citizens suffer or the behavior changes when income increases rapidly, when they invest money or when they waste too much money. But I agree that the definition is not good. As for the second observation, the controversial nature of the statement decision of a subject to invest money as a driving force of the economy, I agree with you. The wording is rather unclear and calls for clarification. Dear Vera Nikolaevna, thank you for your recommendations. And let me answer your main comment, where you draw attention to the lack of study of relationship between the concepts of institution insurance market, insurance policy. I agree with this comment and with your definitions you have given in your review. So I will work on that in the future. As for your second comment, it should not be attributed to threats. The company citizen is preservation of solvency and planning of future investment. Yes, I agree that so the wording is planning does not pose a threat to economic security. And as for your third comment, thank you. It's important to take into account the concepts of cooperation and solidarity behavior, solidarity-based liability, and building a culture of trust in insurance system. This is indeed a very important idea, with which the further study of the social and psychological aspects of the topic would find its continuation. Dear Lyudmila Georgievna, let me answer your comments. There's noted some redundancy in the submission of empirical material. Too detailed description results of the pilot stages of the study. I agree with your comment, but I'd like to say that we were guided by the lack of research of insurance behavior in Russia. So we tried to give as much information as possible. As for of the stage 2 were different. Say it we combined two surveys. The questionnaires were developed collecting data from questionnaires task for clients of insurance companies, as communication with them only takes place once a year when a new policy is bought. But as we have correctly noticed, at stage 4 this error was corrected. A sample was made differently. Timofey Alexandrovich, in response to your comment where you recommended the theoretical part, the structure of insurance behavior, the related psychological analysis, which would allow to identify personal, interpersonal, group, and micro psychological factors affecting the attitude of a person. Thank you for this recommendation. Indeed, this is an important idea, and in the future, we'll try it in my work, in my articles, to take in these levels into account. As for your second comment, I may say that indeed to increase the opportunities of different statistical methods. In the future, we will try to use structural modeling in our works, and is a wider version of regression analysis. And as for hypothesis, thank you very much for this remark. We really need to be corrected, and we'll certainly work on the wording, work to improve the wording. Dear Mikhail Mikhailovich, thank you for your evaluation of my work and for your comments. And I'd like to say that, yes, I started this work because practice of working with insurance shows that trust is remains at very low level. And in the course of my work, I tried to demonstrate the importance of financial literacy. Financial literacy is very necessary, and spontaneous introduction of laws and situational behavior of insurers in the market. These do not manifest that this confidence will grow in the future, will not lead to growth of confidence in the future. New approaches are needed in providing state insurance policy. And you had a comment about maybe I did not compare motivation of insurers and policyholders. We had an idea, and of course we will take this into account in the future, that insurers, of course, they will get, they belong to the marketer type, because while their level of financial literacy is certainly higher, and they use rational market strategies more often. Dear Tarota, indeed, you made many questions and comments. Thank you very much for this, because it's very important to take in the international experience into account in our work. And I will try to answer briefly the comments that you've given today. As for the economic security, of course, insurance is not economic safety of an individual is only one of the factors that affect and should affect, as the insurance institution should take into account insecurity and concerns that citizens have about insurance risks, because this is a very new sphere in understanding the economic behavior. When individuals buy cars and apartments, they want to know they are protected, and in the context of this, we have studied and the economic security of an individual only in the view of insurance policy, insurance performance. You tried to compare how we behaved and setting our task in defining insurance policy and insurance, and here we acted according to our field of study. So it was important for us to study how citizens perceive the policy pursued by the government. As for the second, I will try to combine, because this comment was also given by Professor Gurieva, so I will answer later. As for the samples, as for VMAX and future attitude to ProMax and other methods, thank you very much. This is a very valuable comment. I agree that despite our experience of use of VMAX, we use other statistical methods as well. And dear Professor Koev, absolutely right in saying that I did not explain in the first stage of study. I'd like to clarify our studies methodologically. We can call it as right, because it's the same respondent. We interviewed the same respondent during a prolonged period of time. These were Russian citizens, insurance policy holders, reside permanently in St. Petersburg and Leningrad region, and I agree that would be good to have a bigger sample, but unfortunately we didn't have access to policy holders in other regions of Russia, so we used dear Professor Gurieva, I would like to answer your comments briefly, and in response to your main comment, corresponds with the concept of with the comment of Dr. Gonsirovska. First stage, author supervision, regular clients who extended their policies between 2008 2016. So we had 3,304 persons under our supervision. So we did not interview them. Out of these, 1,254 policyholders were interviewed. The second stage, we interviewed 108 persons, same insurers. In the third stage, the sample consisted of 127 persons from St. Petersburg and Leningrad region, respective of insurance experience. And at stage 4, the sample consisted of 304 respondents. So they answered our questionnaires. We used the internet, and maybe we did not. So whoever uses internet in villages, maybe so that these are citizens who use other forms, other ways to search for information. So why did we decide that St. Petersburg and Leningrad region will be good for our sample? That's the reason for that is because of data of the Ministry of Finance 2009 for 2019. I can demonstrate that 51% of all insurance policies were purchased in Moscow and 9.7% in St. Petersburg. So they thought that St. Petersburg is a region where the economic activity is quite high of the citizens. It's quite high. And to answer your question about the lack of gender and age differentiation, I'd like to say that such research has been conducted before. The number of market studies, a priority of men or the women in buying insurance, and therefore we didn't set ourselves such goals, though such data is available. We shall publish such data. Moreover, I'd like to say that can comment that mostly men buy obligatory car insurance more often, and there's no, in our study we didn't obtain any significant age distribution. So mortgage insurance is more is in demand more among citizens aged 39 years old, but so maybe they use who are more likely to use insurance strategies. Maybe this citizens acting in a more responsible way, and citizens have more market oriented compared to pensioners and youth. So I that 18-29-year-old they didn't get insurance because of low income, and so basically they don't need these products. So our aim was to show that since it's important to educate our students, teach them some financial skills, minimal opportunities for financial literacy. As for hypothesis, it was proved. We proved it with the in the stage 4. As so was we clarify about rational market strategies, rational market. So we was on page 94, 217, 220. Is speaks partly affected structure stage of point allocation of market structure. See factorial structure of the questionnaire of citizens' preference, page 225, and in the 5th factor of structural analysis, table 24. And this market behavior is given in table 8 on page 112 in policyholders typology. And as for using the term, self-rational strategies of consumer behavior, we were guided by well-known economists and their theory of marginal utility. And the most main theories were developed back in the 19th century by Gossin, Jevons, Munger, and their followers, where usefulness is the ability of product or service to meet human needs. In case of insurance behavior, one can say that policyholders behave rationally in the market if they strive to achieve maximum experience and benefit in choosing an insurance product with limited opportunities. The term market strategies is more about the strategy of accurate calculation of their property and other risks and transferring them to third parties from the point of view of expediency and acceptance of the values of the new market economy, including the work of existing financial institutions. And regarding the existing relationship between life satisfaction and the attitude of economic policy, turned out that citizens who are more satisfied with life believe that their income is in line with their work and expect to increase their income in the future. Thank you. So these are my answers. Thank you. Let's see. Sergei Anatolyevich, are you satisfied with the answers? Yes, thank you very much. Vera Nikolaevna, are you satisfied? Yes, I am satisfied. Lyudmila Georgievna, I am satisfied. Timofey Alexandrovich, yes, thank you. Mikhail Mikhailovich, yes, I am satisfied. Agata Dorota, are you satisfied? Christy, are you satisfied with the answers?
Thank you for answers.
Спасибо.
And I'm also quite satisfied with the answers to my comments. And let us continue. And the next item on our agenda, I have a question to all the attendees not included in the Dissertation Council. Does anyone present here want to speak? We don't have any volunteers, so let us continue. And let us give the floor to the academic advisor, Professor Dyneka Olga Sergeyevna, Doctor of Psychology. Thank you. I have known Olga for a long time. In 90s, Thesis as a student in Polytechnic. We are talking about her new achievements. She decided to change her business career for science and success. She is very purpose-oriented and highly motivated, and it's easy to see that she's very interested in what she's doing. She is really concerned with what she's doing as a researcher, and that is a very good combination where practical experience used for research for the benefit of her research, applied practical significance of her work can already be seen. I'm not talking about her work in the insurance industry, talking about something that was mentioned by our respected experts, the course of economic psychology that I'm reading to my students, I'm using. And this aspect of attitude to insurance, the typological approach seems to be very good to me, and I am very grateful that in one more sphere of the economic behavior it is being used, and so we realize that we live in a complex society which includes both paternalists and market-oriented population. Also, I'd like to say that regardless of being an independent researcher, Olga learns easily, and she managed to learn a lot during that period, including development methodology, following my algorithm. She processed material using a scientific park of St. Petersburg University. Not all the doctoral students do that, and I think that's also a very good thing. And finally, she proved her qualifications with the help of an online course offered by St. Petersburg University. She studied a discipline called Development Implementation of Financial Literacy Modules for students, for university students, and we believe that in the future, in her career as a teacher, that will help her. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that among researchers, among scientists, the scientific community has a new member who is very purpose-oriented, very creative, and very responsible researcher. And the minor drawbacks of our work connected the result from the advantages this perfectionism sometimes make it so it's we always want to cover everything, but that will come with experience, and I think we were able to see good results today. Thank you. Dear colleagues, the Dissertation Council will now proceed to the next item, to discussion. For that period of time, please disable online broadcasting, and I'm asking all the colleagues and all the attendees who are not members of the Dissertation Council to leave the room, and we shall invite you to come back after the discussion. Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear guests, our meeting is resumed. We are on air. Are we on air? Yes, we are. Well, the most important moment of our session has come, and I now put awarding the academic degree to the open individual vote. Let me remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council on awarding the academic degree shall be considered positive if more than a half, but not less than 3 members of the Council participating in the meeting have voted for it. So I'm asking Council member Belazorov Sergei Anatolovich, what's your opinion? I'm for awarding the academic degree of candidate of psychology to Medyanik Olga Victorovna. Thank you. Dear Minina Vera Nikolaevna, what's your opinion? I'm for awarding the degree to Medyanik Olga Victorovna. Thank you. Dear Ludmila Georgievna, your opinion? I'm for awarding the degree of candidate of psychology to Medyanik Olga Victorovna. Thank you. Dear Nestik Timofey Alexandrovich, your opinion? I'm for awarding the degree to Olga Victorovna Medyanik. Reshetnikov Mikhail Mikhailovich, your opinion? I am for degree of candidate of psychology to Medyanik Olga Victorovna. Council Menda Ganserova, your opinion?
Olga Medyanik with the title of candidate.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Dear Kristikoev, your opinion, please?
Ja голосую за.
I'm for awarding. And me, Gurieva Svetlana Zakhodovna, my opinion is I support the work of Olga Viktorovna. Let us proceed to count votes and announcing the results. Thus, dear colleagues and guests, let me announce that out of 8 members of the Dissertation Council participating in the meeting, 8 voted for, no one abstained, and the decision to award the degree of candidate of psychology, specialty 19-00012, political psychology, to Medyanik Olga Viktorovna has been made unanimously. The final word of the applicant. The floor is yours. Members of the council, your permission, I will read. Let me express my gratitude for the interest in my work, for constructive suggestions and comments, positive assessment of my work. I'd like to thank members of the Dissertation Council, Dr. Agata Gansirovska. I'd like to thank you in Polish. Professor Kristikoev, Professor Mikhail Mikhailovich Reshetnikov, Professor Nestik Timofey Alexandrovich, Professor Belazorov Sergei Anatolovich, Professor Minina Vera Nikolaevna, Professor Milger, and Gurieva Svetlana Zakhodovna, the chairman, for wonderfully conducting this session. I will try to take all your comments in account in my future work. I'm very grateful to all the people who assisted me, the guidance and advice. I'd like to thank especially my academic advisor, my teacher, Professor Deneka, for her professional support she provided to me during this study, who inspired me to write this work, and who every day shared with me her experience and knowledge. Thank you for your wonderful cooperation. Very sincerely, I thank you for your loyalty, for your interest, for your kindness, and I'd like to thank members of my Department of Political Psychology, Department of Sazonova Ekaterina Vyacheslavovna, and St. Petersburg University, where I work, for the opportunity to submit my thesis and to see my dream come true. I thank all the attendees, all the guests, and for the attention to my study. And I cannot but thank my husband, my parents, and my children for their patience and support. Thank you. Well, on this positive note, with a sense of gratitude for an excellent work, well-coordinated work, I would like to thank all the members of the Dissertation Council, for attendees, for everyone present here. Thank you very much for taking part in our session. And once again, I congratulate Medyanik Olga Victorovna on awarding the degree of Candidate of Psychology. Thank you. The session is closed. Please stop the broadcasting. Thank you.